Salve to Discipuli, this is Magistra Betty, and this is the Stage 29 lesson on purpose clauses. Purpose clauses in general are not new, but we're going to look at a slightly different way of doing them. As a review, purpose clauses are subordinate clauses, meaning they cannot stand on their own. They explain the why of the action in the main clause. So far, we've learned them as starting with an ut and ending with a subjunctive. Now, they can also start with a relative pronoun or ubi. They're still going to end with a subjunctive. Couple examples. Femina servum misit qui cibum emerit. So this is a subjunctive. Here's our qui. So the woman sent the slave who would buy food, or who might buy food, or you could say to buy food. But notice that this is not an indicative. This is not indicating what happened. This is not stating a fact. As far as we know, the food was never actually bought. So you cannot translate this as the woman sent the slave who bought the food. We don't know if the slave actually bought the food. We just know that the reason why the woman sent the slave was to buy the food. All right, loquum quaerebamus ubi staremus. We were looking for a spot where we could stand, or where we might stand, or you could say to stand. This does not say we were looking for a spot where we stood. As far as we know, the standing never actually happened. As far as we know at this point, we're just looking for a spot. All right, go ahead and copy down these 4 practice sentences. Bracket the purpose clauses, underline any modifiers and draw arrows, label as much else as you can, and then translate the sentence. All right, sentence number 1. We've got a qui here along with a subjunctive. So this is a purpose clause. Qui here is referring back to the haruspicem, or the soothsayer. We've got a nominative subject. We've got an accusative direct object. We've got our main verb. Qui, nominative, so this is the subject of our ut clause. Exta, this is a neuter plural, so it's our direct object. And then we've got our verb. So the priest summoned the soothsayer who was to inspect the entrails. Or you could say the priest summoned the soothsayer to inspect the entrails. But this may not be translated as the priest summoned the soothsayer who inspected the entrails. As far as we know, the inspecting never actually happened. All we know for sure is that the priest summoned the soothsayer, and the reason why he summoned the soothsayer was so that the soothsayer could inspect the entrails. All right, we've got our clause here. Starts with quam, a relative pronoun, ends with a subjunctive. Pretiosum is an adjective modifying gemam. Quam is referring back to gemam. We've got a nominative subject, an accusative direct object. We've got our main verb. This is an indicative. Quam is accusative. Uxori's dative, so it's our indirect object, and then we've got a verb. So the senator was looking for an expensive gem, which he might give to his wife, or we could say to give it to his wife. This does not say the senator was looking for an expensive gem which he gave to his wife. As far as we know, he never actually gave it to his wife. As far as we know, he never actually even found one. All we know is that he was looking for an expensive gem, and the reason why he was looking for it is because he was going to give it to his wife. All right, here we have a qui, relative pronoun, a subjunctive, and then we have a prep phrase in here. Quinque, the 5 craftsmen. Qui is referring back to the craftsman. We've got a nominative subject, an accusative direct object. We've got our main verb. Qui is the subject of our dependent clause. Figuras, accusative direct object, and then our verb inside of our dependent clause. So Hetarius hired 5 craftsmen who would sculpt figures on the ark. Or you could say to sculpt figures on the arch. But this does not say Haterius hired 5 craftsmen who sculpted the figures on the arch. As far as we know, the sculpting never actually took place, or maybe it hasn't yet took place. The only thing we know for sure, the only indicative we have here is the hiring. All we know is that Haterius hired 5 craftsmen. The reason why he hired them is so that they could do some sculpting. All right, here we have our result clause. Starts with ubi, ends with a subjunctive. Meus is modifying filius here. We've got an accusative direct object, a complementary infinitive. We've got our verb. Notice we have no nominative here, but we can tell by the M that the subject is I. Here we do have a nominative subject and our verb. So I used to want to buy a house where my friend might live. Notice this does not say I wanted to buy a house where my friend lived. That makes it sound like I wanted to buy a house, the house that my friend lived in already. That makes it sound like a bunch of different things, but this is not indicative. This is simply explaining why the person wanted to buy a house. All right, Discipuli, remember, these are subordinate clauses. They cannot stand on their own. They explain the why of the main action in the clause. Now, in addition to starting with ut, they can also start with a relative pronoun or ubi. They still end with a subjunctive, though. Vale, Discipuli.